Hey class, I wanted to do a quick video for you just to go over the organizational diagnosis applied project part 1, which is due this week. I think that maybe there's some uncertainty about what's expected for this. I know the instructions are brief and you have to write 4 to 5 pages, so I just thought I would kind of expand a little bit on that. So the organizational diagnosis project there's 2 parts to it. The first part is sort of this background and description of the organization itself, along with some initial thoughts about some of the concerns that you have about the organization. And then the second part is more extensive, and that's where you're really gonna dig into some of the organizational behavior theory that we've been learning from the class, and you're really gonna use that 6-box model to diagnose the organization. So maybe not diagnose it, but to maybe apply and give some suggestions for improvement. So think about any organization in the same way that maybe a doctor would assess a patient, right? So when you go to a doctor, first he or she takes time to listens to you and look at your symptoms, and they take your temperature and all these things that they do, right? And then they give you some advice or a prescription, or tell you to get off your feet or whatever your problem is, right? So when you're thinking about doing an organizational diagnosis, you want to do the same thing first. So our first task is to diagnose what the problem is. And so you're learning a lot of ideas and theories from the class, and you're going to apply some of those ideas and theories to make improvements in the organization. But before you do that, you have to diagnose it first, right? So think about this first part as sort of, and I know some of you are nursing students here, so let me give you an illustration that maybe you can relate to. This first part of the project is what you might call the intake, right? So you're going to get the vital signs. You're going to talk about the patient, right? You're going to take the temperature, and you're going to kind of get all these things, kind of baseline data on it, and give your initial assessment of what the symptoms are. Okay, so let me lose that medical analogy here for a minute, because I know I'm getting out of my depth, and some of you are probably already laughing at me. So the first part of this paper, what you're really going to do is you're going to describe the organization itself. Okay, so you're just going to give some factual information about its history, the industry you're in, how big it is, how old it is. I would even suggest too, depending on the size, if it's kind of a smaller, medium-sized organization and the founder is still around, and the founder is still involved in operations, that you would discuss that as well, because founders have a big impact on the organization, on the culture and the operations and the management style and all those sorts of things. So you want to be real upfront about that and talk about whether or not the founder is around. If the founder's not there and it's maybe larger, more bureaucratically run, you also want to talk about that. You want to talk about the management style and those sorts of things. Now, I want you to talk about sort of your initial assumptions and thoughts about some of the concerns that you might have. So you've been going through this class and you've worked at this organization, or you know about this organization or their subunit, and so I want to get your impressions of what some of the challenges are in that organization, right? So the instructions say describe a crisis or change process or functions or culture, etc. Now, you may not know where to start with all that. You probably maybe have a million ideas, or maybe you have no ideas. Well, use that organizational diagnosis questionnaire to help you establish some thoughts on that. Now, at this point in the project, you don't have to give that to anybody else. But I want you to take it, and I want you to be thoughtful as you're going through it. And as you go through it, there may be a couple areas that really jump out at you. For example, you might say, some of the staffing issues or process issues or leadership issues or culture issues or how they deal with change issues. Some of the things that ODQ and the whole 6-box model kind of kind of bring up. So what I'd recommend is at this stage is that you review that document on the Wheeze board 6-box model, okay? Because that's a great diagnostic tool. Okay, again, you're diagnosing before you're prescribing a remedy here. So use that to help you think through some of the main areas in an organization. And then you're going to sort of write that up and say, you know, based upon my reflections of the 6-box model and the ODQ, here's 3 areas that I would, you know, I think are a challenge or problem for this particular season in this organization. All right? So, so give the results of the ODQ that you take, and do that in an appendices of the paper, right? You're not going to take up a whole 2 pages of the paper with that, but just give your summary of it and then attach it at the end just to show me that you actually did that, all right? So I hope this is specific enough and gives you some guidance. Again, for the second part of the paper, you're going to go more in depth, and that's where you're going to really pick apart these areas. You're going to give some of the theory behind some of the areas, and then you're going to give your recommendations, right? Because now you know all these different things in organizational behavior. So let's just say there's a motivation issue or an evaluation issue or a rewards issue or a culture issue. You know, that the final part of the paper is where you're going to give your recommendations, right? So try to hold off on fixing the problem at this point, right? I'm not asking you to fix anything. I'm asking you to diagnose using these 2 tools, the 6-box model and the ODQ. All right? So I hope that's clear enough. If it's not, if I made it more confusing for you, just send me a note and I'll do my best to help you out. All right? So blessings and have a great rest of your day. We'll see you online.